In 1337 AD, the course of European history shifted dramatically. That year, King Edward III of England pressed his controversial claim to the French throne, citing descent from his grandfather, Philip IV of France. His plea was rejected by the French court, setting the stage for a conflict that would engulf both kingdoms, a struggle now remembered as the 100 Years' War. What Edward failed to secure through inheritance, he vowed to seize by force. Thus began a war not just of armies, but of generations.
The 14th century was a world on the brink, a time of famine, plague, and near constant warfare. Centuries of growth and prosperity suddenly collapsed as the Little Ice Age swept across Europe. Crops rotted, livestock died, and the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 devastated millions. Entire villages vanished, and in some desperate corners, the unthinkable occurred. People turned to cannibalism to survive.
Fields went untended, cities fell silent, and faith in divine order was shaken to its core. Yet, amid despair, transformation brewed. The feudal order, already cracking under its own weight, began to crumble entirely. Survivors found new leverage, and monarchs began to centralize power like never before. From famine to plague, the 1300s tested Europe beyond measure, but through that crucible of suffering, a new world was slowly being forged.
Before the 100 Years' War, England and France were entangled in more than rivalry. They were family. The English crown itself was steeped in French blood, descending from the Norman conquerors who crossed the Channel in 1066. For centuries, English kings held vast lands in France, bound by uneasy oaths of fealty to the French monarchs.
But by the 1330s, these ties had frayed beyond repair. England's King Edward III, young yet ambitious, sought to restore his dynasty's lost dominions. And in doing so, he lit the fuse of a continental inferno. His claim to the French throne was denied under Salic law, which forbade inheritance through the female line. Insulted and defiant, Edward declared himself rightful king of France, launching an era of warfare that would devastate both kingdoms.
Their story began with Nurhaci, a chieftain of the Aisin-Joro clan, who, in 1616, united the fractious Jurchen tribes under a single banner. In doing so, he gave them a new name, the Manchus. Armed with the powerful organization of the 8 Banners, an elite corps of soldiers who lived and fought together as a single organism, Nurhaci and his successors forged a state that could rival the Ming Empire to the south. Meanwhile, the Black Death ravaged both nations, yet even the plague reshaped society. Survivors demanded fairer wages, serfs escaped bondage, and feudal lords saw their grip weaken. Monarchies, in turn, gained strength, building the first centralized governments of Europe. By the war's end, England and France were no longer feudal fiefdoms, but nascent nations, their peoples bound by shared suffering and emerging identity.
At the center of medieval Europe sprawled a realm as vast as it was chaotic, the Holy Roman Empire. Encompassing what is now Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and northern Italy, it was less a kingdom than a mosaic of hundreds of duchies, bishoprics, and free cities, each fiercely guarding its autonomy.
Voltaire would later mock it as neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. But in the 14th century, it remained a sacred idea, the successor to Charlemagne's legacy and the divine Roman order. Yet that ideal was constantly at war with reality.
Unlike hereditary monarchies,
the imperial throne was elected, chosen by a council of powerful nobles and clerics, the prince-electors. Any aspiring emperor had to bargain for votes, promising privileges that sapped central authority before he even wore the crown. The result was paralysis, an empire powerful in name but fractured in governance. This disunity was on full display during the 100 Years' War, when Emperor Louis IV of Bavaria sided with England, even as his own vassals, like John of Bohemia, fought and died for France. While England and France inched toward nationhood, the empire splintered further. Yet amid this chaos, brilliance flourished. Trade routes, guild cities, and universities turned Central Europe into a hub of learning and commerce.
In the 14th century, Italy was not a single kingdom, but a patchwork of vibrant city-states. Florence, Genoa, Pisa, and Venice, each a miniature empire of trade and ambition. Their fleets bridged east and west, linking Christian Europe to the riches of Asia and the Islamic world.
Through commerce and competition, they accumulated immense power. Venice dominated the Mediterranean Sea, while Genoa rivaled her as a maritime powerhouse. The wealth from these republics would soon fuel the Renaissance, giving birth to artists and thinkers who bridged the medieval world into modernity.
Yet Italy was also divided by faith and politics. The papacy, forced to flee from Rome to Avignon in 1305, split Christendom in two during the Great Schism, when two popes, one in Rome and one in Avignon, both claimed divine legitimacy. The church that once united Europe was now fractured by ambition.
Meanwhile, in Iberia, Christian kingdoms were finishing their centuries-long Reconquista, the final expulsion of Muslim rule from Spain. By the mid-1300s, only Granada remained as an Islamic stronghold. Victories like the Battle of Rio Salado, 1340, marked the end of Muslim invasions, paving the way for Spain's unification under Castile and Aragon.
These kingdoms, strengthened by war and trade, built powerful navies and centralized rule, setting the stage for the age of exploration that would soon follow. In the shadow of the Mongol Empire, Eastern Europe stood at a crossroads. The once mighty Golden Horde ruled vast territories from Ukraine to the steppes, demanding tribute from the fractured Rus principalities, the forerunners of modern Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine.
Among them, the princedom of Moscow slowly gathered strength, biding its time until it could challenge its Mongol overlords and forge a new empire, the Tsardom of Russia. But that tale belonged to the next century.
Farther west, the Teutonic and Livonian orders, warrior monks from Germany, brought the crusading spirit to the Baltic, subduing the last pagan tribes. Yet their zeal met fierce resistance from Lithuania, which not only survived but expanded, conquering parts of Rus and challenging Mongol power. Meanwhile, Poland, miraculously spared from the Black Death, rose as a center of stability and tolerance, offering refuge to Jewish communities persecuted elsewhere in Europe. This alliance of faith and pragmatism would later shape the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, one of the great powers of early modern Europe.
To the south, the once glorious Byzantine Empire decayed beyond repair. Weakened by Crusader invasions and internal strife, it became a shadow of its former self, dependent on Italian merchants and surrounded by enemies. But from Anatolia, a new power advanced, the Ottoman Turks.
By the century's end, the Ottomans had conquered Bulgaria and Serbia, encircling Constantinople itself. In 1453, their cannons would finally break its walls, ending the Byzantine millennium and marking the true dawn of the modern world.
The 14th century began in chaos, famine, plague, and endless war. Yet, from that darkness, new nations, new ideas, and new empires emerged. It was the end of the Middle Ages and the birth of the world we know today.
If you found this journey through history fascinating, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another dive into the past. Because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how we got here.